Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So, grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, inviting you back to another weekly conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm excited to welcome Alan Katz to the show. He's written over 50 books for children, including favorites like Take Me Out of the Bathtub and other silly Dilly songs, the Lieography series of absolutely untrue, totally made up, 100% fake life stories of the world's greatest heroes, SOS Society of Substitutes, and his newest that we'll be talking about today, Zooloween. Alan, welcome to the KidLit Love podcast. I am so glad you're here.
Well, thank you. What a delight to be here.
Oh, well, the pleasure is all mine. As you know, a few weeks ago, Dan Gutman was on the show to celebrate his 20th anniversary and his 100th book in the Weird School series. And after we pressed stop and we were having a conversation talking about the episode, he said, if you want to talk to someone who's really funny, like even funnier than me, you've got to talk to Alan Katz.
Uh-oh, that's a kind recommendation, but a lot of pressure. Although funnier than Dan Gutman is not that high a bar. Right? No, it is. Everybody knows that. No, he's a wonderful buddy and a terrific guy.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful that he connected us so that we could have this conversation today. So let's jump in and talk about you. You've been a writer for over 40 years. You've got Emmy-nominated television shows, a whole bunch of projects for kids, 50 books under your belt. Tell us all about it. Did you always want to be a writer, and how did you get to here?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer, and one of the things that I show in my school visits is my third grade report card, where Mrs. Balowitz, the wonderful Mrs. Balowitz, said, Alan must work toward expressing his written ideas more creatively. And then I have a whole bunch of stuff that I show kids that you can see in my book, Oops, my poetry book, Oops, a parody of Jack and the Beanstalk that I wrote in third grade. I was always had my eyes on being a writer. And let's face it, every job involves writing. I always tell kids, the more you write, the better you write. The more you read, the better you read. The more you read, the better you write. The more you write, the better you read. It's hard to remember, but it's so important to do. And kids will raise their hand and say, I'm going to be a football player. I don't need to know how to read. And I say, good luck when they hand you the playbook.
That's
You're
right.
going to say, where, what, how. So, if we can unlock that in kids to say, wait a minute, I'm a writer. We use the same 26 letters of the alphabet. But I really, the only job I've ever had was working for my dad in his children's shoe store when I was giving out Tootsie Pops and Archie comics and running the register. Other than that, I've never had a job where writing wasn't the goal of the job.
Wow. So what were some of those jobs? You've
Well,
got a really neat backstory.
yeah, it's a weird backstory. It's been a weird career. You mentioned the Emmy nominations. I am a 6-time daytime Emmy loser for 5 years on the Rosie O'Donnell show. If you remember, she used to sing funny song parodies every day. I wrote or co-wrote hundreds and hundreds of songs for her, often during a 1-hour train ride into New York City from Connecticut, where we live. And I would read 7 newspapers, find out what was going on in the world. And at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, I would write it right there on the train. And at 10 a.m., she'd sing it with Adam Sandler, Justin Timberlake, Will Ferrell. And it was hundreds of songs and games and guest shtick. And I loved it so much. It was 5 years of that. I wrote for cartoon series. I was Emmy nominated and lost lost to Batman because you can't beat Batman, for a Disney show called Disney's Raw Tunage back in the 90s. I've written for episodes of Pinkalicious and Goof Troop, wrote for the Grammy Awards and the Tony Awards, and it's always just about being as funny as I can be. I like to tell kids it's a very weird job. I don't fix people's teeth. I don't help them become better readers or mathematicians. I don't help people with their banking. My job is to be as funny as I can be.
Mhm.
Although I have a caveat with that, and I might as well throw it out right now. And my caveat is my job depends on being funny, as Dan Gutman's does, but I will never, 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 never make a joke that hurts anybody's feelings. I don't care how funny it is. If 1,000 kids are laughing and one person feels bad, not a good joke. You won't see it in my books. You won't hear it from me. And I know Dan Gutman's the same way.
Yeah. So, what made you take the turn into children's books specifically?
Well, when I was writing all those funny songs for Rosie, one night at dinner, my daughter Simone, who was in third grade then, said, "Hey, Dad, how come you write all these songs for TV shows, but you don't write any songs for kids?" And I said, "I can do that." And I sat down and wrote "Take Me Out of the Bathtub."
Mhm.
It was basically the natural progression from writing funny songs that celebrities could sing. I also wrote, by the way, and I think my kids are the most proud of this. I wrote the song "Turn the Tub Around" to the tune of "Turn the Beat Around," the disco hit, for "I Can't Believe It's Not Butter." And it was a commercial starring Megan Mullally that was a famous campaign. And my kids used to bring their friends into our guest room where I wrote it and say, "This is the spot that my dad turned the tub around." And people are addicted to that song because it's so silly. It's like lyrics like,
It's
you
catchy.
know, no hydrogenated oil, so there's no trans fats here. I don't think there's any song in history where they're singing about hydrogenated oils, but
No.
get people to turn the tub around and see the nutritional values and the increased vitamins and the less fat, and it worked beautifully. So after writing all those songs, writing "Take Me Out of the Bathtub" seemed like a natural progression. There are now 9 Silly Dilly songbooks, and there's even a Silly Dilly musical that we've done, I don't know, about 40 performances here in Connecticut,
Wow.
often starring my son. My son David is a musical theater performer, and that's a joy to have kids singing along and laughing along and writing their own songs. As long as they do it with kindness, kids can write their own songs.
Right. So, all those years writing on demand, so reading all the newspapers, literally writing in the morning on the train in order to have it be a go in just a couple of hours. You clearly work well under pressure.
I
That's
do.
for
I'm
sure.
not sure. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I create my own pressure sometimes, I think, but there was no question whether it was the Rosie Show. I also spent a year with the Tony Danza Show. He had a talk show,
Yep.
and it was writing, like you say, on demand because the curtains were opening at 10 in the morning, and Rosie was coming through those curtains, and she had to have. Well, she was such a master at improvisational, extemporaneous humor, but we'd give her a song and she'd nail it, to the tune of, probably wrote 2 parodies of "Be Our Guest," the Disney song "Be Our Guest" 30 times. "I'm so stressed and depressed," it's just it practically writes itself.
So, I'm curious, do you write your books in the same way? Does it just come out quickly and a quick draft, no pressure, or is it a different process than that kind of writing you were used to?
A little bit of both. Um, Yesterday, literally yesterday, I thought of an idea for a Father's Day book. And on my iPhone, I wrote 8 or 9 pages of it, or 8 or 9 pages to start it. It's obviously gonna be revised. Nothing's perfect the first time you write it, unless you're Dan Gutman, who doesn't need to revise anything. I'll leave him alone. But, there are times that I have like yesterday, I wrote the first 8 or 9 pages. I sent it to my son. I have a son who's a political speechwriter. We have 4 incredible kids. And, I sent it to him. I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Wow, are you onto something?" And he started, you know, bantering back and forth with me. And I thought, wow, that came out of nowhere. And that's what I love about writing is the fact that, one minute I'm online at Walmart or not online because I'm checking out my own stuff. Um, but one minute I'm in Walmart and the next minute I'm writing something and can't wait to get home to get back to my desk to do it. And I love that.
Yeah. That's a that's a a beautiful way to be, right? To be able to just think and do and write and,
I think so. I mean, I visited a school the other day, and the kids were like, "Based on your book, Got Your Nose, you should write a book because it ends." I don't mind giving away the ending. It ends with after a chase through town for Grandpa took Becky's nose, playing Got Your Nose, and they chase through town and they find it. And in the last minute, she leans over and says, "Hey, Grandpa got your ear." And the kids say, "You should write a book called Got Your Ear." And I say, "No, you should write a book called Got Your Ear." And kids are doing it. And they're sending me their creativity. And those are kids who said, "I have no intention of being an author. I don't have an idea." I mean, I've had kids write to me and say, "Can you send me an extra idea?" And I'll write back. I have this thing that I send back that says, "Write about squirrels, write about your brother, write about your cousin, write about the best place you ever went or the place you were the most bored." And they go, "Hey, yeah, I can do that." And when they send it to me, boy, do I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking as I was kind of thinking of this episode. I will talk about it briefly, although we are talking about your newest book today, but really stupid stories for really smart kids. This just collection of hysterical stories that I kept thinking like, okay, I want to write one. Kids are gonna want to write one of these, right? They're just so
Kids
fun
are
and
doing
exciting.
Kids are doing that too. They're writing. Now, my message is very clear, I hope. Not everything is funny. You know, if you read my poetry book, not all poems rhyme, not all poems are funny, but give it a shot. You know, my book, you were kind enough to mention the Lieographies.
Mhm.
I did a writer's workshop with some kids in Warwick, New York a few weeks ago. And I said, they said, "Can we write a Liography together?" And I said, "Okay, let's." And we created probably 2 pages worth of humor, and it's really good. And the kids were like, "Okay, what if we did Albert Einstein?" And Albert Einstein invents a time machine and ends up on stage with Taylor Swift. And they sing, and it's absolutely hilarious. And I was typing it and saying, "Okay, you know, who's got an idea for this part?" And when we were done, I sent it to them, and they're finishing the book.
Ah,
Which I love, you know, in my book, Oops, I kinda mentioned the poetry book, Oops, 100, uh, silly rhyming poems, and there's a poem in there that is the shortest, simplest poem ever, and this is what I love about being an author and what I love about visiting schools and working with kids. I have a poem called "The Lollipop." If you don't mind, I'll quickly tell you my
please
poem, "The
do.
Lollipop."
Yeah.
And this is a poem that after I read it to my wife, she said, "Are they seriously paying you for that?" And she's a gifted, wonderful poet, by the way. Here's the poem, The Lollipop. Lick, 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 stick. After all those licks, what do you have left? The
The stick.
stick. And kids look at me and I say, if you're thinking, I could have written that, well, of course you could have written that. You know what a lollipop is, you know what you do with it. No exaggeration. Teachers have sent me well over 100 poems, all of them called the ice cream cone. And it's lick, 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 plop. The scoop falls off. How much do I love that? You know, I mean, on one level, I don't need the competition. On the other hand, you know, seeing kids go, "Hey, yeah, I could do that. If
Yes.
that counts as writing, I like that and I can do that." So we
Yeah.
unlock that in each other. We inspire each other.
That is it exactly. That is why I became a teacher. That's why I became a reading teacher. That's
Mhm.
why I do what I do because it does. It unlocks something. When you find a book that speaks to you for some reason that makes you laugh, that makes you think it's possible, but when you figure out that you actually have that power too, just by writing something down, whether it's published or not, just that voice of yours can have a place on a page, that to me as a kid was just everything.
Absolutely, absolutely, and to, you know, to see kids, I mean, one of the things that I do in school visits, and I don't think I'm unique in this, I think a lot of people do it or should be doing it, frankly, is I tell the teachers, I tell the educators, there's gonna be a boy or a girl or several who haven't been reading and haven't been writing. And because of something I said or something I did, and I'm not taking credit because I'm not doing anything different than the educators say every day, but it's going to unlock my visit in some way is going to unlock something. And I say, if that happens, send me a note. Send me what they wrote, and I will send them a note back. or I have these, I'm holding it up, but it's a got your nose pencil sharpener that is just based on the book Got Your Nose. And I send those to the kids, or I send them a little notebook or something just to say, we're all in this together. We're all doing the same thing. And if I can help unlock that, wow, am I glad to do that.
Yeah. Oh gosh, what a gift.
Makes
What a
me sound better than I am, but it's true.
no, it sounds awesome. So the book that we're talking about today, it was published in July.
Yes.
And we're coming up on a season that it is perfect for. It's called Zooloween. Were you always a Halloween lover before we talk about the book? Was this a holiday that was kind of your thing?
It was my thing when our 4 kids were growing up, and, one of the things I do every birthday is post their Halloween pictures because 'cause they're probably the most embarrassing material I have. Um, Dragons and big bird costumes and all that. But, yeah, we were always big with Halloween, not like crazy decorating the house or giving out the full-size bars, but but, yeah, we always liked Halloween, and I thought, "What about Halloween at the zoo?"
Yes.
And it's a picture book illustrated by Stephanie Liberis. I hope I'm saying that right. I haven't met her, but I am in awe of her talent,
Me too.
as I am with all my illustrators, most of whom I haven't met, frankly. Um, and she's illustrated it and brought it to life. It's Halloween at the zoo, and they have a parade where the animals are dressing up like each other. And it's broadcast like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And they're looking for the winner of the costume parade. And there's a very big surprise at the end as to who wins.
Yes.
And I just think it's fun. It's told in rhyme. It's told in 4 lines of rhyming verse. And, I've shown it. One of the things that I do at school visits is I always say, "Here's what I'm working on. What do you think?" And kids are the best audience. They'll raise their hands and say, "Ooh, it shouldn't end like that. It should end like that." Or, "I would do that, but I would make it a girl instead of a boy." Some wonderful, wonderful focus grouping. And Zooloween was very much a part of that, and it reflects the kids' sensibility at some of the visits, and I'm very grateful for that too.
That's exciting, dude. They and I imagine those kids when the book comes out, they'll remember those conversations. It can feel really good that,
Well,
the kids
sure.
were
There was
cool.
a school in Indiana, actually, in Indianapolis, that I told them there was a book that I couldn't get published, that nobody wanted it. Publishers, and let's face it, not everything I write, not everything anybody writes gets published. But they were kind of like, keep going. We think it's funny. We'd love that book. We would want to see that book. And I got a stack of literally 100 letters that the kids wrote saying, send these to your publishers.
Oh,
And kids saying, you may not want, I'm paraphrasing, but you may not want this book because you're an adult. But as a kid in 3rd grade, I can tell you we laughed our heads off, and you really ought to reconsider. The joy that brought me. And frankly, one of those stories, that story is one of them in Really Stupid Stories.
oh, it is.
Yes, it is.
Oh.
It didn't become its own book, but it found a home in Really Stupid Stories, and I sent a copy to the school saying, "You helped me in no small way, and you inspired me." We
Oh,
inspire each other, we always do.
yeah. Well, it's something. There's readers and there's the authors, but the magic is when that connection is made, whether on the page or in person or whatever it is. There's magic there.
Well, sure, and, there are 2 types of schools that I visit. One is, I say, "How many authors are there in this room?" And everybody says, "1." And I say, "Wait a minute, if I were an astronaut and I just came back from a lunar mission, and I had a space helmet and I had space gear and I know where the launch pad is, that would make it true that I'm the only astronaut in the room." But if you know the 26 letters of the alphabet, if you have something to write on and something to write with, you do what I do. I do it as my job, but you can do it and you can love doing it. And, sometimes I say, "How many authors are there in this room?" And everybody raises their hand. And in question and answer time, a girl will say, "Someday I want to be an author." I say, "Stop. You're an author today. You're an author tomorrow. You're an author every day of your life." And, I became a better author in 3rd grade and 4th grade and 5th grade. And now that I'm in like 47th grade, I don't know what grade I'm in, but we do it all the time. It's like sports.
Yeah,
The more you write,
that's right.
the better you write. The more you swing the ball, swing the bat, the further you're going to hit the ball or kick the soccer ball or whatever. And it's fun to unearth that and to find those feelings in kids the same way my kids learned. Out of my 3 kids, 4 kids, excuse me, I was gonna say 3 of them have something to do with writing in their lives, and one of them is more business oriented, but he's a good writer, and we're all writers. We all
Yeah.
have stories to tell.
We do, and I loved, in Zooloween, you're right, the illustrations are beautiful, they're
She's
bright,
amazing.
they're colorful, they're fun, like, you just kinda wanna lean into the book a little bit more to see it. But it's so fun to see the costumes. You've got, the yak who's the football player, you've got the space llama. I think, Ellen, my favorite is the grilled cheese cheetah.
The grilled cheese cheetah, that's what kids someone actually question and answer time, someone actually asked, "Have you ever seen a grilled cheese cheetah?" And I said, "This book is not so much based on truth,
Right.
but you know what? That's where my imagination took me."
Right.
And, some things are based on truth. A book that I'm working on now, it's about a car wash, and it's about something that happened to me and my son in the car wash. Or my son and I. I'm sorry. We'll erase that. Um, my son and me, the 2 of us, Alan and David. And, it happened to us, and I'm turning it into a book.
Yeah. Does that happen a lot for you? I know you mentioned, like, ideas might just come to you in Walmart, but are pieces of you scattered throughout the book? You, your kids, your
Pieces
wife?
of me and my kids. I would say out of the 51 books, I'd say 47 of them have something to do with my kids. In fact, my son Andrew was living in Washington, D.C., and he was standing on the train platform. And as he stepped on the train, he hugged me, he kissed me, he said, "I love you." I repeated all those things to him, and he reached out and said, "Hey, Dad, got your nose." And I said, "Don't take my nose to Washington, D.C." And I laughed, and I went back to the car, took out the notebook that I always carry. I always have a little pocket-sized notebook,
Mhm.
and I wrote the words, "Got your nose." Now, would I have remembered them if I got home 19 minutes later and I hadn't written them down? Sure, but why take a chance? And
Yes.
that started Got Your Nose. And, there are a couple of twists in that story that took a while to figure out. The book didn't write itself on the ride home from the train, but it came about because Andrew said, "Got your nose." I have a book called Don't Say That Word, illustrated by David Catro, one of the 10 books we've done together, where Andrew this happens to be Andrew also, was using potty language. Aunt Selma would call, 85-year-old Aunt Selma would call, and she'd say, "How are you, Andrew?" And he'd say, "Duty," and just hand me the phone. And I'd say, "I wish there were a book that could teach kids what words not to say, specifically Andrew." So I wrote a book, and Mom says, "What happened in school today?" And in 4 lines of rhyming verse, Michael says things like, "In art, everybody got inky, but Mom, that was only the start. Because Richie then made the room stinky by blasting a really big, and before he can say the word that would rhyme with start, we all know what it is. Mom yells, 'Don't say that word.'" So in each spread, he learns which words not to say. I can read it with 500 kids at a school. Nobody yells out the word. And then at the end, Mom says, "Well, today was a sea of great dramas. I hope there are calm days ahead. Run along, put on your pajamas. It's late and you should be in." And before she can say bed, he says, "Don't say that word." It's been reviewed as a book that starts a great conversation about acceptable words and language. Really, all I wanted to do was get kids yelling the word fart, but it worked out. Can I say fart? I just did.
Yeah.
Um, so I love a book like that because it's sneaky funny.
Yeah.
It's parentally okay. I mean, one of the books that I've had trouble selling this year is a potty training book that I've been told is the funniest book editors have ever seen, but they can't do a potty training book because it's frankly sort of graphic. And I say the photos, the illustrations of what's in the potty are nowhere near as disgusting as what the parents who need the book have in their fingernails. So, we'll find a home for it. I think we will. It's a, very unique potty training book.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm way past the potty training days, but now I wanna take a peek at it.
Well, thank you. Actually, out of all the 9 Silly Dilly songbooks, the funniest song is a potty training song. To me, the funniest song from the book On Top of the Potty. It's 14 potty training songs, and, my allergies are making me suffer voice-wise, but would you like to hear that song very quickly?
Of course I would.
Okay, and this is very good advice for anybody listening who has potty training needs right now. If you gotta go do poopy, please don't wait. If you gotta go do poopy, potty's great. Uncle Sydney and Aunt Dottie always use the potty, although not at the same time, they alternate. If you gotta go do pee pee potty chair, if you gotta go do pee pee potties there, you will get real good with practice. And the happy fact is you can trade your diapers in for underwear. So it's advice wrapped in a song, wrapped in a party.
That's right. Oh, I love it. I think my cheeks are hurting from
I'm sorry. Oh my
laughing
gosh.
so much at
Well,
that.
at least it's the cheeks and never mind.
Yes, yeah, it's these cheeks.
Yeah.
So, all of your books, there's clearly this theme of laughter and fun and silliness and enjoyment. And when I got to meet you at That's in Children's Literature Festival, and if people don't know about it, it's this wonderful festival where you buy so many books that are instantly signed right in front of you, and it's wonderful. And I wanted to read the wow, the word is escaping me. What is it called?
Inscription, dedication.
Inscription. I was
Yeah.
a dedication. It's an inscription,
Funny.
uh, which I think just sums up a beautiful philosophy that is really clear in your books, which is to Stephanie, read, laugh, and read some more. Like what a good life philosophy that is.
Listen, I am very clear. Don't only read my books, for goodness sake. The Lieographies that you mentioned, they're kind of like you've seen the Who Was books. Who was any number of public figures. There must be hundreds of them. Well, the Liography is the absolutely untrue, totally made up, 100% fake life story of Amelia Earhart, Babe Ruth, and Thomas Edison. Amelia Earhart's still an aviator, Babe Ruth's still a ball player, but Thomas Edison's still an inventor. But there isn't a shred of truth on all the pages, except for the final chapter that says, okay, now that you know the Liography of Babe Ruth, here's the real story about him. Go find out more. I like to say my goal is to get kids to laugh their heads off, then put their heads back on and go read something serious. I'm not saying only read my books. I'm not saying only read humor. But if you like reading because of humor, there's a whole library out there. There's a whole bookshelf at home or in the classroom to say, wait a minute, now that I'm a reader, now that I love reading, it's kind of like you would never give somebody cotton candy and ice cream for dinner. But if it's part of the meal and it gets them to eat the steak and the chicken and the salad and whatever, why not?
That's
You
right.
know, and I'm not saying, the difference with biographies are, I'm not saying 1 + 1 is 3, which is wrong and misleading. That's it's such exaggeration in the books that I'm saying 1 + 1 is 17,312,004,
Right.
which is just ridiculous. For example, there's a chapter in which Babe visits kids in the hospital based on truth. And while there, he often does unnecessary surgery on the kids, removing a kidney or a spleen for no good reason. And he's such a generous man that he pays a real doctor to put it back. And a reporter once said, Babe, isn't it hard removing a kidney or a spleen without any medical training? And Babe says, no, hitting a fastball is hard. Removing a kidney is a piece of cake. And for good measure, he removed the reporter kidney and had a piece of cake. You're not going to believe it. You're not going to do a book report that says Babe Ruth did surgery
Right.
on kids. It's just designed to make you laugh. The same way if I tell you a joke, you're not going to hear a joke and say, that's the truth. That's the news. As if I couch it in, get ready to laugh. My conscience is clear.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're all having a lot of fun at the
I
same
hope so.
time.
Thank you.
So, what next books are on the horizon? What are some things you're working on that we could look forward to?
Well, in October is a joke book coming from Scholastic called Alan Katz. I have to get my name right. Alan Katz presents the funniest jokes ever for kids. It's 300 jokes and poems and a short story or two. Again, just designed to make you laugh. I think a kid with a joke is armed, as long as it's a joke that has kindness. It's a kid with a joke is armed to make friends and build bonds and friendships. Telling a joke is a great friendship builder. It really is. And some of these jokes are, absolutely, absolutely ridiculous. For example, what do you call a deer with no eyes? No idea. There's one joke that's sort of on the line of, I don't think it's unkind, but you'll get it in a minute. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Europe.
You're a poo?
No, you're a poo. Wordplay, silly jokes. So that's coming up. There's a book based on my family. Actually, the four characters are Simone, Andrew, Nathan, and David, my four kids. And it's a Passover book that will be ready in time for Passover, which will be next spring. I guess the book will be out probably in January or February in time for Passover, called The Mysterious Missing Matzah. In a Passover Seder, generally grandpa hides the afikoman and the kids have to go look for it after the meal. And in this case, grandpa hides it and nobody can find it. And grandpa doesn't remember where he put it. And there's a kind of weird happy ending for that as well. So looking forward to that, and always working on new stuff. Always, I might be doing a book with my wife, who is a very serious, gifted poet, as I mentioned. We might be doing a poetry book together. We're working on that now, and more laughter.
More laughter. There's enough going on in the world that can make people not laugh. It is just such a gift to have that good old belly laugh. It just makes you feel better. At
I
least me.
appreciate that. I, to the small extent that I'm adding to that laughter, that's great. And kids always ask me, why do you like writing so much? And I say, look, we're here in Queens, New York, or Warwick, New York, or wherever we are. I was in Cleveland a couple of weeks ago. And I say, I love the fact that right now, kids in Florida, or kids in Baltimore, or kids in California could be reading Take Me Out of the Bathtub and writing their own funny songs. All you have to do is count the number of syllables in the original song instead of Take Me Out of the Bathtub. If you count the 7 syllables of Take Me Out to the Ball Game, the original song, you could write, Won't you hand me that pickle? Or you could write, Let's all go to the playground, and you're writing a song.
Yeah.
And kids like, hey, yeah, I can do that. And they do. And I love that. I
Yeah.
really love that.
Yeah. Oh. Where is the best place to find you online if people want to know more about you and all the books?
Well, my website is alankatzbooks.com, ALANKATZ. If you don't know how to spell books, you're listening to the wrong podcast. .com. My email is alankatzbooks@aol.com. Yes, I'm the last AOL in America. I'll take the
Uh-huh.
heat for that. But it's in a lot of my books, and kids write to me there, and I didn't think it was fair to change it. And just, reach out. If somebody writes something and you want me to send them a note, yes, I will. Even if we're not friends, we can be friends after one email. So many of my Facebook friends are teachers and librarians who I've interacted with, either at conferences or at their schools. And, that's a panel of experts too. I will write to them and say, is this book too silly? Or is this book, could you read this in a classroom? And I love that. I treasure those relationships.
Well, I've said I don't know how many times on the podcast now, but book people are the best people.
They really are. They really are. It's and that's why I will drive. We live in Connecticut, as I said. When we met in Hudson, that was over a 2-hour drive each way. Stayed over, had dinner with Dan and his wife, Dan Gutman and his wife, with my wife. But I love that. I just love being among people and meeting readers. And I'm very blessed to be able to interact with people who have either read my books. By the way, I do have to tell you, this is a warning to all of your listeners. Take Me Out of the Bathtub turned 23 in early May. It's been celebrated and revered, and if you go to YouTube, there are literally hundreds of kids singing my songs in classroom settings or in school settings or in the bathtub. But it was just banned in Katy, Texas.
I remember when you told me that at the festival, and I just couldn't believe it.
There is a naked Tushy on the cover, so beautifully illustrated by David Catro, and I'm calling it Tushygate because apparently the kids in Texas can't look at a naked Tushy and laugh their heads off and have a good time reading.
Yeah.
So I feel, listen, book banning is a terrible, tragic thing in so many ways, but this is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's kind of like taking it to an extreme that, I mean, when you ban a Jerry Craft book or you ban a Phil Bildner book or Chad Sell or so many incredible authors who have so much to communicate to kids and so many ways to influence kids' lives in a positive way, and their books are taken off the shelf, that's tragedy. For Take Me Out of the Bathtub to be taken off because of a naked tushy, I'm sorry, that's just
Yeah.
absurd. I wanted to send them stickers to put on, like pants stickers to put on the cover. But so be read that carefully because the influence of a naked tushy. I think No David was banned too.
Yeah, my gosh, and it's not really a naked tushy, it's an illustrated naked
It's
tushy.
an
We
illustrated
we
naked
have to be
tushy.
we have to be very clear about that, it's an
It,
illustrated naked tushy.
it's not my naked tushy. It's not like my author photo. That would be a good idea to send them one. Send them a picture. Say no. Listen, more respect to them too. They're doing what they think is right, but they're tremendously wrong, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We could talk a long time about book banning, and every time it happens, it just makes our world and our views and our ability to be human smaller
It's true.
every
It's
time it happens.
it's true. It's really a tragedy. And somebody said to me, "You're not really an author till you've been banned," and I said, "That's not a badge of honor." By the way, I am often confused with Alan Gratz,
Mm.
Gratz,
Okay. Okay,
who
great.
writes wonderful middle grade, upper middle grade fiction. And on Read Across America Day, I'm constantly invited by teachers who think that I'm him. And when I say, just to be clear, I'm Alan Katz, not Alan Gratz, they're like, I don't know who you are. Goodbye.
Oh, no.
I'm uninvited so fast. And on Alan Gratz's birthday, all my Facebook friends wish me happy birthday. And it's just he's a lovely man. We've spoken online, and it's just a crazy mistake.
Yeah. Oh, well, KidLit Love listeners will not make that mistake.
Please don't make that mistake. Please don't make that mistake. I mean, I have tremendous respect for him, but if you're looking for Alan Gratz, you're not going to get silly dilly songs.
No, no, and we want silly dilly songs
I
and naked
appreciate
illustrated tushies and funny essays, all the things.
Look at my epitaph. Illustrated tushies and silly dilly songs. That's very funny. Well, it's a delight to do what I do, and to the extent that there's any joy coming off the printed page into kids' lives, I'm very grateful for the educators and the teachers and librarians and principals and folks like you who share the wealth of literature that's out there.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for that, and thank you so much for coming on today. This was such a fun conversation. I think I gotta agree with Dan. I think I my cheeks hurt more from this conversation than it did with Dan's, but I cannot imagine having dinner with the two of you
I-
at the same
is there a cheek pain barometer that you use
time.
to
I
like,
think I'm gonna have to start one.
oh no. Well, I apologize if I've caused a personal laughing injury. I mean, that's
I'm
but no,
file
listen,
workers comp. It's okay.
what a delight. You picked a subject that is near and dear to my heart, me.
Yeah.
And thank you for singing along, rhyming along, laughing along. Thank you for all you do to bring literature into the schools and into kids' lives. It's humbling to sit here in Connecticut and say, "Well, gee, here's a book. I hope people find it. I hope." One of the things I do, by the way, and you can see these online on YouTube, is I make videos when I introduce my books. And one of the things I did for Got Your Nose is there's a video, it runs about 3 minutes, and it's some of my buddies like Dan Gutman, Nick Brule, Chris Grabenstein, Howie Mandel from America's Got Talent, Alex Willen, the incredible illustrator of Got Your Nose. He's also done books like Yetis Are the Worst, and they're all playing Got Your Nose in some way
Oh,
to camera, and it's just a steady stream of these authors playing Got Your Nose, Victoria Khan. Uh, so I do those things, and you can find that online.
I will find it and put it in the show notes
Oh,
along with
great.
contact you and the links to the books because
Thank you.
I
Yeah, reach
that's
out, even if it's just, to share a joke or to share a story, please reach out and let's keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming today. And
I,
listeners, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.